Well, hello, and welcome to the MilVet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the MilVet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and I have the pleasure today to be joined by Raj Shah, who's going to share some of his experience in the military, in the private world in particular, and what he's done as far as transition, and hopefully shed some light for you veterans and non-veterans out there that are interested in getting into this space. For those that may not be aware of the MilVet and what we do, we provide an executive platform for veterans that are looking to get into private equity, venture capital, to learn more about the space. I encourage you, if you're interested in these type of roles, check us out at themilvet.org. Check out our podcast, get on our list for our newsletters, come to any of our in-person events to learn more. We'd love to talk to you and help you out as you look at maybe transition or learn more about this space. But today, it is my pleasure to be joined by Raj. And Raj, I'd love to give you a little intro of what are you doing these days? Tell the audience what you're doing today.
Well, Beau, it's great to be here with you, and I appreciate what you and MilVets does for veterans, in the U.S. and around the world. And so, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Today, I have an amazing job where I get to support future and current entrepreneurs trying to build things that really matter and continue the mission forward. So, I'm a venture capitalist based here in San Francisco, working with founders at the earliest stages, think seed A, investing in technologies that are going to have an impact both for national security as well as commercial use cases.
I love it. I can't wait to dig into some of this, and I know this will be super impactful for a lot of our listeners out there. But I'd love to back it up a little bit to figure out, how did you get to this spot? Obviously, those things don't happen overnight, and I'm sure, as with anyone, it is a non-linear path to get to where you are today. And I'd like to guess maybe start a little bit with your military experience, which is pretty cool because you're still serving in the Air National Guard. And I'd love to hear about what was kind of the impetus for you, or the kind of the push to join the military in the first place.
Well, Beau, I grew up in Georgia. My family are immigrants from India. They came here to the U.S., emigrated in the early 70s when the U.S. Eased some of the visa process because they needed uh, doctors and engineers and whatnot. So my family came here. So me and my sisters, we were born in the U.S. And we were the beneficiaries of just amazing opportunity, right? Like my father came from a very poor village in small town in India, and we were able to attend some really really great universities here. So when I went to college, I really wanted to serve. I didn't really know what that path would be and how I would serve. But while I was there in undergrad, I became a policy major. I was studying conflict, wrote my thesis on the interplay of air power and ground power. And so I wanted to serve in a physical role. And like all little kids, I loved airplanes, never outgrew that. Uh, Got to fly in a little Cessna there in college. And so the Air Force said I could serve and fly airplanes. So I said, great, sign me up.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, a lot of folks have a reason they join because there's someone their family was in there. But I've noticed, I've had several guests on the show that were immigrants, and again, I think there is this feeling of appreciation of being in the United States and wanting to find that way to give back. And it's a trend that I've heard in several of my podcasts, and I love that for you, and that you've been able to balance that military career, with your entrepreneurial career, and keeping that going, which is not an easy thing to do at times, I am sure. But I'm excited to hear about that as well. And so, did you go OCS route from college, or what was your kind of commissioning path when you were to get into the Air Force?
Yep. It was my, I guess, junior year. And you're right, Bo. I have no military background in my family, either in India or here in the U.S. So a little bit of a black sheep in the family, if you will. But I decided my junior year that's what I wanted to do. I had also been introduced to this thing called the Air National Guard, and there was a unit there in New Jersey out of Atlantic City that flew F-16s, and so I actually. Signed up and took the oath with the 177th Fighter Wing in New Jersey. And so went to basically the Guards version of officer training school that summer after graduation.
That's awesome. That's great that you were able to balance all of that. And you knew, did you know up front that you wanted to be in the Guard? I mean, you were, I guess, not more focused on a business career, but you kind of had a plan up front that you were going to try to balance the two while doing that from the get-go. Was that your plan?
I think for me, it was in that I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a career military officer, and there's been a long history in our nation of folks that have balanced work with the military and the reserves, and had civilian careers both in business and government, and so when I learned about the Guard and that I could continue to have that kind of opportunity and perhaps go back and forth, I thought it was fantastic. And I was, unfortunately, the downside is there's just less slots and opportunities there. But I was very fortunate to be able to get picked up.
No, I love that. And again, I think the Guard and reserves in this country is very little understood, even by our active duty military a lot of times, and the opportunities that are available for our Guard and reservists. And again, our Guard and reservists are working full-time jobs, but they also are, on the weekends and when time of crisis, they're being called up to go out there and be in the fight. So thank you for that. And I love that. This is a different path than most that I talk to. It is kind of a unique path, but one that I love that you've been able to maintain through a successful career. Well, I guess I would go back then as you're finishing up school as well. You have the Guard piece and you're doing that. Did you know early on what you wanted to do when you graduated? I assume you had some concept of getting into business in general, but what was kind of did you have a dream or thought when you were in school of where you wanted to be?
It was. I don't think I had a fully formed view at that point. I was very just focused on joining the Guard, which, of course, as you note, has a long history, right, from the Revolutionary War and the militia of this concept of a citizen soldier. So I knew I wanted to be a citizen soldier, but to go through the flight program, it's 5 to 6 years. So I hadn't really have it totally dialed in, but I knew I wanted to probably do something entrepreneurial. I like building teams, like the idea of creating something, and I'd graduated right as the dot-com boom was happening. So I think it was going to be something entrepreneurial and at the intersection of technology.
Got it. And what was kind of the path to your first job post college? Was it through a network? Was it through friends? Was it through, I'm just always curious about, every transition point. There's usually because of a network somewhere or a mentor somewhere. Did you have someone that supported you to kind of get that first job, or what was that all about? How'd that work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, look, Bo, I think for um, most really interesting or unique jobs and paths, right? It's having mentors and connections and warm introductions that's so critical. So I was very fortunate. I think actually probably my first 4 or 5 jobs had some connection through folks I had met through undergrad. And so yeah, so I had a couple of uh, folks that were a couple classes ahead of me that had mentored me through the consulting and business school process, and that was really helpful.
And did you go straight to business school, or did you have a stop between that in college?
Um, so no, so I joined the Guard, and then I spent some time at McKinsey, which is a management consulting firm. So I spent a little bit of time there before going to business school.
Yeah, I knew you had them. I mean, it's fascinating the number of veterans that have some time at McKinsey. They just have more than I had appreciated. They do seem to be a place that veterans are successful for. Again, and I guess I'll ask you that question: why do you think that veterans or folks that maybe have somewhat of a military training or background can be successful at a place like McKinsey, because it's the name brand when it comes to consulting out there. But I think there's something about, at least in my head, that veterans maybe bring, or people that have a military background bring something a little different, maybe a different perspective on things there. I'm curious what about your time there and how it was maybe formational for you moving forward.
Yeah, Bo, I mean, I think I would even just wider that comment that you made, which is I think military veterans and leaders will do well at a number of things. And those skills are highly valued of how do you lead a team? How do you lead in times of uncertainty? How do you deal with stress? How do you be, singly focused on achieving a mission? And I think those things translate well, particularly in larger organizations where you are dealing with complex situations, and there are a lot of people. So if I think about a place like McKinsey and the other tier one management consultancies, you're dealing with probably some of the most important problems for a large organization. You've got a team of 4 or 5 people that are going to go and try to solve it, and it's got to be relatively unemotional and analytic as to, excuse me, the best approach towards that. And so I think there's been, as you well note, a long stream of military veterans that have had great careers at places like McKinsey and others.
And one of the things I always talk about, as I spent 7 years at Amazon running their veteran hiring programs, and when I would bring them in and try to, you're always trying to influence the hiring managers to consider hiring a veteran, because some of them don't know about veterans and don't know what they bring to the table. I would always talk about the ability to look at problems differently. There's a diversity of thought. I think it does teach you problem solving. Especially, I certainly can relate to my Marine Corps experience. We didn't always have the most stuff or the best equipment or the best gear, but they drop you into situations that can be hard, and you just have to figure it out. And that figure it out ability, and maybe that grit to push through what are going to be hard days, long days, or things, those intangibles maybe that sometimes non-veterans don't appreciate, that veterans do bring to the table. And it's an added bonus that you get someone that not only has the school and has the background, the degree, but if you add on top of that the leadership, the ability to problem solve, the ability to just kind of put your head down and grind through those hard days. I mean, that's a unique combination from what I've seen, and I think that's something that maybe some people that are non-veterans don't appreciate.
Yeah, Bo, I think you hit off the first thing you said, which was spot on, which is the comment around grit. So my job today is to bet on early founders who are building their first business. Many of them and most of them are first-time founders, right? They've never been a CEO before. And the number one question that we try to understand and have conviction around is, are they going to quit? Do they have the grit to fight through the uncertainty and the difficulty of starting a business? Because you are definitely, outmatched, outgunned by the competition. You're building something from nothing, and it's a lonely job to boot. So how do you make sure that people aren't going to quit? And I think, again, veterans have been put in similar situations. Um, Interestingly, as you talked about your experiences as being a hiring manager, one of the things that I've seen veterans maybe struggle with or uh, have a challenge is how to translate all of that great leadership and experience that they've had in the military to the civilian world. And in today's world, so few people have served, right? Less than 1% of the US population has served in uniform. And so most folks that are in these hiring manager jobs, don't have a visceral understanding of the military. Much of their information has come from movies and Hollywood. And so while they respect it, they really don't know what does it mean to be a platoon commander or a battalion commander or a squadron commander. Like what are the different uh, skills and levels of responsibility that perhaps came in these jobs. And so I think it's really incumbent on transitioning vets to explain that in an appropriate way to hiring managers. And it's not to take your military title and translate it into some like nonsense business title, like just, talk about what you did, but really explain, right, how many people did you lead, how did you manage. I mean, this where again those warm relationships And connections are helpful where, like yourself, if there's a veteran on the team that could say, look, not all vets are created equally, but this person was a, forward deployed special operations person. Like they were really doing amazing things. Um, and so you should take a really hard look at this person. So that warm intro or translation, I think, can be vital.
And you know what? I will say, during my time at Amazon, I took that very personally. The job to educate because most hiring managers, most recruiters are not veterans, right? So they look at oh, you were an 0311, you were a 26X this, you were a surface warfare officer, you were a pilot. Like, well, why would I hire that person? And again, to take the time to educate, those those leaders in the company. And if you can, we certainly try to take, the senior leaders on, take them to base, take them on a boss's day to, ride in a Humvee, get on a helicopter to see these folks in action. And they always come back motivated and fired up. And, again, it's marketing, right? But it's a good way to, because they don't know. Again, you're spot on where their impressions are made from watching TV and watching movies, and it's Rambo and it's somebody going postal, and it's like they have some negative connotations about what a veteran can bring to the table sometime. But to see them in action, to see them leading, it really can change their perceptions and then open that door, to bring more and more veterans into the organization. Because I've also seen that too. Once you get one veteran there, one becomes two, two becomes four, and the next thing you know, it's a wave of people coming in there. But I do think that is incumbent upon the veterans in the organization to be a vocal, advocate for folks to send the elevator back down and bring folks into the company for sure. So I think it's part of the job. I took it that way for sure.
Mhm.
That's good stuff. Well, how did you? So I mean, McKinsey's a pretty, I say, buttoned up, kind of a straight laced organization. I think of it that way. I never served there, but you obviously learned from that and had vision to get into the defense tech, more startup space. Did you have something, that an idea or a spark? What was kind of your initial move from that into the kind of the space you're in now?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a very, I guess, non-traditional pathway. So after business school, I decided that, I decided two things. I said, one, the real threat facing our nation and organizations were not a horde of MiGs coming over the horizon, and hopefully they called me to go after them, but rather folks on a keyboard, right? Cyber. And so I spent a lot of time studying it. And I think at the same time, around that same time, I had realized too that, I really did want to build a company from the ground up, to be a founding entrepreneur. And I think maybe it's because I don't work well for others, and so I needed to I was a bad employee and needed to do other things. But I was fortunate to meet a couple of really smart engineers in the National Security Agency, and we ended up building a company together that helped Fortune 500 enterprises, protect themselves from nation state cyber attackers by being able to detect them in a unique way and then help stop them from causing damage. So it was a long process, and raising money was not easy. I think I met every venture firm on the East Coast that had ever done a cybersecurity deal, and they all basically gave me some variation of, hey, why don't you come back when you have 10 customers? Well, if I had 10 customers, I wouldn't be here, right? Endorsed early stage venture. I think I met 42. I came out to California and started meeting investors here. And there's just a different mindset, at least then, on risk tolerance. And so, one meeting was with Andreessen Horowitz. They gave us a term sheet that afternoon. We signed it that evening and shifted the company west.
That's awesome. Well, I can appreciate that more than you probably know. I spent 97 to 2000 up at Fort Meade. I'm a SIGINT officer by trade in the Marine Corps. So I get the need for what you were doing and were doing back then, and it's probably even more need for it these days based on the threat that's out there for sure. But I talk about that initial willingness or ability to take the risk. I mean, I think that's what I'm always impressed with founders. A lot of people have ideas, and they'll kick them around, but only a handful are willing to take the jump to go all in because you really have to go all in and you're betting on yourself. That's what I love about founders. Like I'm basically saying, look, I'm betting on myself to do this. I'm putting all the chips in the table and I'm going all in. I mean, that has to be the approach. But I mean, it's obviously risky. But I mean, you were able to just kind of you believe in the technology enough to do that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I believe in technology and the team, and I was at a stage in life where I could take on that risk, right? Didn't have a lot of dependence then, and so I knew that there was a temporal kind of moment in time too. And so again, yeah, I think really wanted to solve this problem, really wanted to build something, felt like I had met the right team, and so went and did it. Now there's a lot of twists and turns and false starts, and it took a few years to get there. So it's not easy. It looks all easy in hindsight, but I think again that's what we look for now. Is there some real compelling reason that a group of founders want to go build something? And for us, it was to make a mark on something we cared about and to found a company.
I love that. And I'd be curious if you can kind of go back in time and walk me through it a little bit. I mean, did the concept you have for the initial tool or initial product change over time and kind of what did that process look like to get from a lot of no's to get to a yes? And I mean, obviously you have to be just willing to get a lot of no's. And I'm sure you had, and you alluded to that you got a lot of them up front because you didn't have those customers. I mean, is there one point or a thing you can point to say, man, I wish I would have done this differently because once I figured this X out, it became easier. Was there something like that? Was it a pivot to the pitch? Is it a pivot to the technology? Like what changed or what did you learn in those early days when you were getting all those no's to help you be successful and kind of work through that?
I think what's really important as I think about first company and my second two, which all had a couple of pivots, is the customer and product discovery phase, right? So how do you really understand what a customer needs, and how do you hear their feedback, right? Not just what they say, but what they mean. Like this is a pain point that's so important. They're willing to change process or add budget to it, and you're never right on that first kind of product vision. And so being able to hone in on that is I think really key and important. And for example, my second company, we were trying to solve cyber risk through using insurance, and we started first by working with the large insurance companies, and it took us, and we sold them software to build the future of cyber insurance. But it took us a while to realize that the pain point was not high enough for them, in that it was such a small piece of their business that they weren't going to transform how they did everything for this. And there's just the incentives of the conservatism made it difficult. So we ultimately had to compete directly by, in addition to building the technology, build an insurance company next to it. So I think it's like really listening, hearing, and building something that customers love. And if you delight customers, the rest of it, the fundraising and the investors, will take care of itself.
Yeah, I again harken back to my Amazon days, and Jeff Bezos tried to keep it super simple. Like, three things. If you give a customer more selection for a cheaper price and can get up to them faster, those three things, nothing else matters. I mean, I don't care what else you do, all these great ideas, but if it doesn't make it faster, better selection, better price, don't even, we shouldn't even be talking about it. But that's just understanding what does the customer truly want, and being able to hone in on that and not lose sight of that when there are a lot of other distractions out there. What and would you say, and again, I having talked to a few folks that have been founders, it does seem that it gets easier once you've had one success. Obviously, it opens the door. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, right? Once you've had a success, people are more likely to bet on you a second time because they can say, okay, you have a track record for starting company X. Now he has this new idea for company Y. I believe in that team. I'm going to invest in them. I assume you saw that. Has that been, and that kind of goes from one to two and more. Is that pretty fair to say that it was a lot easier the second time around, or is that not true?
Yeah, look, it gets a lot easier the second time around for a host of reasons. One, you've already made a bunch of mistakes in the first one, so you hope you learn from those and not make those same mistakes. And if the first one was successful, now look, venture capitalists and investors, they do many of them do things pattern matching, right? Like if you've had a track record of success, you'll be more likely to be successful the next time. And so people are willing to take bets on you, the investors, other employees that you're trying to pull out of great companies to come work for you and your brand new idea, customers. So I think it just gets easier once you've shown that you know how to make it work. But I'll say one interesting thing, which is I think what really gives the Silicon Valley its strength, is that uh, it's okay to fail as long as you learn something and do it better. So even if you started a company and then it ended up not working and you shut it down, you're still more likely to get funding the second time out here, assuming you didn't do anything, unethical or untoward and drive it into the ground. Because they're like, okay, it didn't work, or maybe the market timing was right, or the technology just didn't get there, but they're willing to take another bet on you. And I think that's what makes Silicon Valley so special.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely some great advice, and fail fast and learn from it, right? You just don't wallow in it. Don't feel like that's the end of it. It's like, hey, more of these things fail than are successful, right? And it's okay to fail, but fail fast and make sure you're taking the key lessons from that to when you reiterate or reinvent yourself, that you've learned from that and have a more focused and clear path to success. What would you, is kind of going back again to the early days, and what are some of the things, for the listeners out there that may want to be founders and get in and maybe their initial founders, and any advice on things that you would do differently, or like what are like the key things that maybe you could share, like, man, I wish I would have done this differently. That was one that I regret, and it took me a while to figure that one out, but now that I got it, it's been very helpful to me.
I ended up writing out a list of like lessons learned from my first company. I think it was like 400 different things that I wish I had done better. Look, it was a success, and so we did do a lot of things right despite doing a lot of things wrong. Uh, I think most of them were around people and HR. Who do you hire? How do you take care of your employees? How do you pick the right people? And so I think a lot of those lessons were that I took forward were around just having really people you can trust, that they're going to be in the trenches with you. And again, I go back to veterans and why we love hiring veterans at my companies and at this firm is we have that shared experience and focused on a mission that's bigger than themselves, right? We want at this stage of a company and certainly at a firm, you want missionaries, not mercenaries. And I think that's what you get great out of the military. So since then, if I look at the second company and this firm, like I probably, my co-founder in the second company is the same one from the first one. So we've worked together for 12 years. The firm, I think outside of our most junior people, I've known every person for 7+ years before they joined us. And so I think surrounding yourself with people that you trust and people that have the self confidence to tell you when you're wrong, right? Because no one's ideas are perfect. I got plenty of wrong ideas, and you need someone to say, this one's not a good one for these reasons, and not be afraid of that, and be transparent and honest. Otherwise, the organization will not be successful.
No, I think that's some great advice, and I love that. I mean, every business is a people business at the end of the day, and find the right people at the right time in the right role, and just in how you work together too. I mean, it may be a great guy with a genius, but if you can't work together, you're going to have that friction that you can't have, especially in a smaller company like that. And I love that you said you've had folks that are sticking around with you, repeat customers, if you will, to stick with you. It's almost like that general that's bringing his staff along, in the military, because you have those guys you've worked with. You've built this team, and that's what you've built. It sounds like over time now you have this team that you've worked with that you can almost, I assume, anticipate how people operate, how they communicate. It's almost that unwritten language. It's kind of like, oh, I know how he thinks. I know what he's looking for. Yeah, your role, and that just takes time. Fair to say?
It does, yeah. These things take time. They're human relations.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. And I guess we'll kind of even fast forward to even in today, because obviously you successfully founded one company, founded another company, and have taken that to a level now where you're supporting an ecosystem of companies. Talk about what you're just this kind of in a broad overview what you're doing now, and kind of what you're looking for, and kind of what all that experience kind of has led you to these days.
Yeah. Look, I think as we look at an ever um, challenging world that perhaps is getting more dangerous, we see the rise of authoritarians that uh, don't respect traditional borders. We saw what Putin did with Ukraine, Xi's saber rattling there in the Pacific, what we saw in Israel, that um, it's ever more important for uh, liberal Western democracies to have a strong military to prevent and deter that type of conflict. And warfare is ultimately changing now, right? We all can see it on TV, from drones to artificial intelligence to unmanned vehicles to cyber warfare is also changing. And most of those technologies are from the private sector, right? They're not from the traditional centers of innovation for the military. And so what I'm excited about today is that I get to invest in companies that are sitting at that intersection, right? There's a cyber company that's helping protect a large bank, but also helping to protect a branch of the military. And we get to invest in them from the very earliest days, watch them grow, watch their visions come to reality, and watch them fight and overcome all kinds of adversities. So what we're really looking for are like really great, passionate founders. So they've got motivation to get something done. They're not going to quit. They really understand something about this space. Maybe they were a buyer. Maybe they were a cyber warfare officer. Maybe they, were a user of this. And they have the ability, right, the charisma, if you will, to recruit people along the journey with them, other employees, investors, etc. And so I'm looking to meet people like that, um, convince them that we would be a great partner for them, that we would help them grow on their journey, and then be a partner on that journey.
I love it. Well, and for those again, for those veterans that may be out there interested in the space, interested in defense tech, because there's a lot of that out there these days. And I talk to a lot of folks that are interested in that space. I mean, how do you find companies to invest in these days? I mean, are people coming to you? Are you looking for them? What have you seen to be successful as far as finding the companies that you're going to invest in?
A lot of it's through networks.
Yeah.
So, networks at universities, networks from the armed services, other venture firms. So, we're constantly out in the world looking to meet people and to uh, find those, next rate companies. We have customers that tell us, "Hey, I just met this young company. I tried their product. Awesome. You should take a look at it." So we get a lot of that. I think for entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs out there, but the best way to approach a venture um, firm or partner is through a warm introduction. We're all discoverable. LinkedIn has shown the world, everybody, what networks they have, and but because we get so much inundated with so much inbound, that having a warm introduction really, helps an entrepreneur get above the fray. In fact, even my own very first fundraise, we had met some people in DC that had begun to advise us, and they had then connected us with the venture firms out in California. And so having that warm introduction would go a long way.
No, I say all the time, your network is your net worth, right? So it's about networking and getting out there and just getting your name in play out there is so critical. Are there any places you do recommend, like incubators or places like, how do if you're trying to break through the squelch and maybe you don't have the greatest network, are there some things or places that you've seen that you like
Yeah.
attend events or some of the just venture capital pitch competitions or anything in particular that stands out to you for those folks out there that may be trying to break through the noise?
Yeah, but I think the good news is there's a lot of organizations now out trying to help veterans do this transition. It's helpful for obviously the service member, but also helpful for the companies. So, if I think about more, just getting a great job at a technology company, maybe either in engineering, operations, or even a customer support kind of role, like a deployed technical person. Um, One organization is called Vets in Tech. They place a lot of veterans into some of the largest technology companies in a whole suite of different roles. Um, I think there are other organizations, the Commit Foundation, they're also doing a lot for veterans. Stanford has programs for veterans to come in and spend some time there. I think they have one's like a month-long program. They have one that's a half-year program. And most of these are all sponsored, right, by the nonprofit. And then, of course, for officers, there's this skill bridge program that the military has, which is enables them to go work at no cost to that employer for several months as they are leaving the service, kind of a try before you buy for both ways. So I think there's a lot of pathways, and I encourage others to explore all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I've worked with Catherine Webster and the Vets in Tech guys for a long, long time. They do some great work for, I mean, the name says it all, right? Vets in Tech. So if you're trying to get your foot in the door, they do a great job. And certainly both in the Commit Foundation, the Honor Foundation, working primarily with the soft guys, but they do a lot more than that too. And I think that's sometimes a challenge, is what I've seen, to be honest, is that there's almost, you hear the term, you can drown in a sea of goodwill. There's a lot out there. I think it's finding the right place to help you move along your journey for that veteran, because there are a lot of competing resources in the veteran support space, the military support space, and trying to find the right spot for you that's going to put you on the path to get to where you want to go. I do certainly believe as well that finding a mentor out there is so critical. And that's one of the things that I'm also a mentor for ACP, American Corporate Partners, and there's others out there. But I think that's something that is probably, I mean, it's interesting. I think we all have mentors in the military. I don't know that folks have them as much in the civilian world. They probably do and should do. I mean, have you had mentors like that both? I mean, because you're obviously you're doing the military thing too. So I would love to talk about just your perspective on mentoring and how you maybe do that to this day.
Yeah, I have the fortune of getting to help mentor some really amazing officers, some that are still in, some reserve, some that have left, but also been just a great recipient of generous time and counsel by so many folks that had retired from the military a long ago and now had great careers in venture capital as entrepreneurs. Current military officers have gone. So look, I think um, the thing I'd encourage veterans again is people want to help you. They recognize what you've done for the nation and the world. So, uh, don't be hesitant to ask for help. Don't hesitate. People will
Yeah.
have a coffee with you.
It's a funny thing, and I think because there's somehow the idea of networking for transitioning veterans in particular has this negative connotation to it. And I've seen that it's like, oh, networking, that's cheating, or that's somehow, I don't know, untowardly to go and network. Like, well, what do you think you did in the military to get things done? You had to know the sergeant down at the motor pool and the guy over at the ammo dump, and you were networking. You just didn't call it that. You call it your hookup or your buddy, but I mean, it's the same concept. It's just somehow I think there's a negative connotation about networking for veterans. They feel, I don't know, it's not comfortable for them. They're not
Mhm.
used to kind of just putting themselves out there and asking for help. I think that's also part of maybe a stigma in the military that, somehow when you ask for help, that's a sign of weakness. And we're certainly taught that you can't show weakness in the military. You have to take care of it and you keep it all inside, which is not a good thing, right? But asking for help is okay. And you need to do that to be successful as you transition, especially into these fields that you don't know about. You don't have the expertise like you do in the military, where maybe you can get by with not asking as many questions or asking for help. But as you transition, it's a whole new world. And if you want to be successful and not continue to fail, ask others for help that have been there before you, and that can expedite your ability to be successful. But there is something about it that I think there's a just a almost a reluctance I've seen from veterans. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit, and I think also, maybe it's just general elections, but the other one is it's such a foreign world, right? If you've spent a career, if you spent a decade or two in the military, it seems very, very foreign and very different, right? Different words, different approaches, different styles. And so I say again, don't be scared. I wouldn't say scared even, but don't be hesitant. Like, people are gonna be excited to want to help. It's a different world, but you're gonna figure it out, and just go learn as much as you can learn.
No, I love that. And is there anything that as you look to invest in these companies, are there a criteria of things that you're looking for in particular? Like, if someone were to come to you and make the pitch, and what's something that stands out to you as something that I'm sure you get. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I'd be curious to that of how many pitches you get to for how many investments you make. I mean, what is it that stands out in the crowd for you? Is it? I assume part of it's the people and the leadership of it, but I'm sure I'm gonna put words in your mouth. But like, what is it that stands out for you? Because again, I have no idea. I'm curious the percentages of pitches to take that turn into actually investments, and what is it that okay, yeah, that's someone that really I think has what it takes.
Yeah, look, we're a small firm, so we're pretty selective. We probably see 700, 800 companies a year, and we'll probably invest in 8 or 10 of them. So, so it is narrow. So first and foremost is the team, right? That's 80%. And I say team. I think it's always better to have a co-founder, somebody that is of equal footing that can again be your sounding board and tell the other founder what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. So I have a strong bias towards teams, right? Two or three founders, not a solo founder, and then all the other characteristics about great leadership, energy, and all the things that we talked about. Um, uh, and then I think the second piece is the market. Like, what are you trying to go solve? Is it is it big enough to worth winning? Right, you're going to go battle for 8 years, and then you win. Is like a big enough market to that it made it worth that time? And for again, venture capitalists, very much you're looking for super high growth technology business. And then third is what's the technology that you're building? Like, why is it unique? Can other people copy it? What is it you, your team? Why are you going to be able to build something that no one else can? And maybe you haven't built it yet, right? Like if it's really early stage, you probably haven't built it. But why do we have the conviction that you'll be able to do it, right? And so, you wrap all those together, a tenacious founding team in a big market with interesting tech, and then we get excited.
That's pretty sweet. But obviously, for 10 out of 800, it's a rare one that can really break through. I'm sure there's some that are great, but not a great fit for you or for whatever reason, timing wise. But that is interesting to just to hear that perspective. I love that advice about having a co-founder. To have someone that can give you that true, honest feedback and say, because I think I've seen several companies that do have an individual founder that has this idea and passion, but they maybe sometimes you can't tell the king that he has no clothes on sometimes, right? Who's that person that's going to be able to do that? I think is critically important, if you're going to be willing to, learn and iterate and move forward. If you're by yourself, I mean, maybe you can move faster some ways, but you're moving faster isn't always the best thing. Maybe it's better to move a little slower and be more deliberate about it and have that, just have the success that comes from that, which is great. So that's some great advice for sure. You've shared so many great insights, I think, on what it takes and your journey, which is great. And you're still on the journey. You're obviously still serving and still out there helping veterans and invested in companies. I mean, what would you like to share? Maybe some closing words about, for veterans that are watching this podcast, advice that you would share with folks that want to get into what can be a very challenging and difficult space, but also super rewarding. What would you share with those folks that are interested in getting into this space?
Yeah, first off, I would say just go for it, right? Like, get out there and go for it. There's just so much opportunity right now, and more than ever, the experiences, both leadership, but the subject matter that veterans have are in demand. Right, the world of defense technology is booming. Hasn't been like this in 40 or 50 years. So timing is good. Go for it. Two, don't settle, right? For your first rollout, like take the time to make sure you found the right role, the right fit. Both that means both the right seniority of a role, but also the right type. There's some things that seem very appealing. Like, man, I just want to be an investor. And then you get into, you're like, man, I actually don't like this. I like operating. I like doing things, building things. And so, making sure you be very judicious about what you choose because you can always change, but you don't want to change too much. And then the third thing is just like we're looking for a team, I'd encourage veterans make sure wherever you go that your boss, your supervisor, the teammates that you're with are ones that you really gel with. You really like them. You have the same values, same energy. I think that's really, really important. In fact, I would compromise on other things before I would the team because the idea might change, right? Especially if it's an early stage startup, it probably will change.
Yeah.
So, but the team may not.
I love that, and that that's just consistent, reiteration that the team is such an important. That is the first and most important thing. Get the right people. The other things that will come, but the ideas may morph over time based on the situation and based on the technology. But if you get the team right, that really is the key ingredient to success. That's awesome and great advice. Well, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. Excited to see what comes next with your company and the investments you're making, and hopefully we re-engage in a few years. You'll have a few more companies that have sold off and crushed it and done well, and some more veterans that are in the portfolio or so. But thank you again for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Bo, thank you, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram @TheMilitaryVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMilVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@TheMilVet.org. Thank you so much and take care.